what is our A, B, and C for number 1? So A, B, C. So if we do x equals negative b, so negative 3, plus minus the square root, 3 squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. So from here, I'm going to just do a little bit of simplifying before we jump to the calculator to do the rest of the work for us. And we can do that when it says nearest hundredth, because we don't need to show all the radical work. We just need to get to a decimal answer. So what I'm going to do is simplify inside the radical just a little bit. So 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 7 is 56. Over 4. So this will give me negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 65 over 4. So I usually simplify it down to this point just so that I don't make a mistake entering it into my calculator. So from here we have 2 answers that we need to get in decimal form. We have negative 3 plus the square root of 65 over 4, and negative 3 minus the square root of 65 over 4. So we're going to type each of these into our calculator. So negative 3, and because we want our order of operations to work out, you have to put your numerator in parentheses. So we're going to do parentheses negative 3 plus the square root of 65 and then divide by 4. And that divide by 4 will go outside the parentheses. So inside your calculator it should look something like this. So if you're having issues where you're here and you do a parentheses and it's showing up inside, delete that and use your arrows to take you outside. So your arrows will move you along so that you can exit your radical and do your end parentheses. And when you've got that, hit enter and let me know what you get. Did anyone just get this as their answer? Anyone remember how we can turn that to a decimal? These double arrows right here above enter, hit those and it'll turn it into a decimal for you.
Can't you just change them?
You can, but this works too. So you should get 1.2655 blah blah blah. Yeah.
I'm getting an
error. Error. Okay, so that means something in the way you're entering it is off. So make sure when you guys are doing, there is a difference between minus and negative. So if you're trying to make a number negative, use the negative button down here, not the minus, because otherwise you'll get a syntax error. Yeah.
I got a whole different number.
You forgot a parentheses. So your calculator automatically puts up parentheses here. So that one just closed your square root. It didn't close the numerator. Okay, so this is our first decimal answer. So if it says to the nearest hundredth, which decimal place is that? The second. So this would be 1.27. Now do -3 minus the square root of 65. Oops, I forgot a parentheses. Divided by 4. And you should end up with -2.77. Is anyone not getting -2.77? Are you getting these, Max, on the little ones? You just, on yours, you just have to do it step by step. You can't do it all at once. So you'll have to do 65, the square root of 65 first, then -3, then divide by 4. So on those ones, you just have to break it down step by step. And for the negative square root 65, you'll do square root 65, but you have to hit the negative button, and then first, then hit enter, then -3, then divide by 4. So I can tell you right now, it will be a lot easier if you use the scientific. There's a lot more room for error on those because of all the different steps. Okay, any questions on how to get the decimal form? Because this is going to be just a lot of calculator practice. Yeah.
So if you make a mistake, how do you go back?
On here?
Yeah.
So these arrow buttons, you can hit up. And let's say I made a mistake entering that. I highlight it and hit enter, and it'll re-bring it down for me, so I can fix whatever mistake that I made. So if I, let's say, I meant this to be a plus, I would change it to a plus. So by just going back up to the expression you made a mistake on, go use your arrows, go back and highlight what you inputted, hit enter, and it'll make it something you can go in and edit again. Okay, so let's try another one. What is A? B? C? Okay, so we have x equals -10 plus or minus the square root of -10 squared minus 4 times 3 times -8 all over 2 times 3. So when we start simplifying, two negatives make a positive, so positive 10 plus or minus, see, -10 squared is 100, and then here we'll have -12 times -8, 96, all over 6. So 10 plus or minus the square root of 196, all over 6. And that's the point where we get to break it apart. So we'll have 10 plus the square root of 196 over 6, and 10 minus the square root of 196 over 6. So tell me what you get for your decimal answers to the nearest hundredth. For which one? For the plus, Chase got 4. What about for the minus?
-0.67.
Negative 0.67. Because when you put it as a fraction, it's negative 2/3, which is 0.6 repeating. And these would be your two answers in decimal form. Okay, any questions at this point on just how to find these values in decimal? Yeah. These are still x-intercepts. These are just how we would go about graphing those x-intercepts when they weren't nice and pretty numbers. We would get the decimal approximations. All right, so one of the things we're doing today is word problems. And word problems require us to know the vertex, a lot like in our last unit, how a lot of our answers were the vertex. It was either the x value or the y value. Well, we're going to go over kind of another way to find that axis of symmetry without having to convert to vertex form. Because earlier in the unit, we would convert to vertex form and then identify the vertex. And which part of the vertex was our axis of symmetry? X. Well, there's actually a formula that you can use that tells you the axis of symmetry without having to do all that. So that's what we're going to go over today, is that formula. That way when we have something like a word problem where we're not necessarily graphing it, we just need to know the vertex. This is a much quicker way to find the vertex without having to do all that work. So our formula for axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a. And that will give you the x value of your vertex, otherwise known as your axis of symmetry. So if we're going to start by finding on number 3 just the axis of symmetry, what is your A? 1. What is your B? 8. We don't need to know what C is for this formula. Okay, we just need to know what A and B are. So for our axis of symmetry, we have x equals, I did forget to put the x equals here, negative B over 2a. So what's negative 8 divided by 2 times 1? Negative 4. There's your axis of symmetry. Now when it comes to the vertex, how can we use the axis of symmetry to find the vertex? Plug it in for x and find y, just like we did with factored form. So in this case it's actually n because that's our variable, but we'll plug it in and have negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 minus 16 equals our y value of the vertex. Negative 4 squared is 16. 8 times negative 4 gives us minus 32, and minus 16. So what does that give us?
Negative 64.
Not negative 64. What is it?
32.
Should just be negative 32. Because you see how you have a positive 16
yeah.
and a negative? So these will add up to 0. So that means our vertex will be negative 4 comma negative 32. So if you were asked in a word problem something that needed to know the vertex, this is a lot quicker than going through and converting to vertex form on your equation. Okay, let's try number 4, same thing. So what is your A and what is your B? 2 2 is our A, 4 is our B. So for the axis of symmetry, negative B, so negative 4 over 2 times A, which in this case is 2. So what is negative 4 divided by 2 times 2? Negative 1. There's your axis of symmetry. For our vertex, we take that negative 1 we've just found for x and plug it in to find y. 2 times negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 plus 5 will equal our y value. Negative 1 squared is 1. And 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So we'll have 2 minus 4 plus 5. And so that means y will equal what? 3. So what's our vertex? Negative 1 comma 3 would be our vertex. Okay, any questions on this formula? Because this is going to be what we use when all we care about is the vertex. If we were going to actually graph it, then we would actually want to do the whole vertex form so we can get the graphing part done. Or it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, our last one is a word problem. That's like what you're going to see on your homework. So you're going to have some on your assignment today that are like 1 and 2 where you're just solving and giving the decimal. Some where you're going to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex, and then you do have a couple of word problems. So I want you to read through the word problem and tell me the important information that we have to focus on, because that's a lot of words where we really don't need all that information. So Max, what do you think is important about this word problem that we need to highlight or mark?
That the velocity is 48 feet.
That actually is not important information for what we're doing.
Wow.
If we had to actually write our own equation, it would be very much necessary.
Okay. Then, path of the ball. How it's modeled.
And how is it modeled?
H equals negative 16. T to the second.
Okay, so we need this equation. That's important. What else? There's a couple more things that are important that we need to look at.
H is height.
That h is height, and what are the units? In feet. And then what's the other thing we need to look at? Someone said it.
T is the number of seconds.
Our time. How t is our time in seconds. So knowing the equation and what each variable stands for, those are the key things that we need to know from this problem. The last thing we need to know is what it is we're being asked to do with that information.
I have a question.
So what are we asked for?
Max height and how long
The max height and how long. Okay, what's another word for max? Vertex. So what do you think we need to do here? What do we need to find? The vertex. So we're going to do exactly what we just did on 3 and 4 with our equation to find the vertex. So start with your axis of symmetry. So what's our B term from our equation? Okay, but what's B up here? 64. over 2, what's A? Negative 16. So that'll give us negative 64 over negative 32, which is what? 2. So what did we just find? The x value of the vertex. Well, in this case, what is x? Which variable is x the same as? H or t? T. Okay, so what we really found here is the time it takes to get to the maximum. So you can say it takes 2 seconds to reach max height, which was one of the questions that we were asked. Now we have to figure out how high it actually goes, so we're going to find the y value of the vertex. So we're going to take 2 and plug it in for t, and simplify. This will give us our height. So negative 16 times 4 plus, let's see, what's 64 times 2? 128 plus 8. So negative 16 times 4, that gives us negative 64 plus 128 plus 8. So what's our height? 72? So that means its maximum height is 72 feet. And those were the 2 questions it was asking. So the word problems that you're going to see on your assignment are pretty similar. They might not all be about height and time. Might be about cost and profit. But they're going to have the same terminology as last unit. The only thing that's different is how we find the vertex. Last unit, all of them were in vertex form. Here, they're all going to be in standard form, to where you're going to need to use this axis of symmetry to find formula to find your x value, and this then plug it in to find your y.